I'll look at the same color in I have right now.
You get that tan.
I would worry about myself too.
I turn mine.
I know you do, but I.
It's a lot of papers here, so I'm.
Good morning, commissioners, and over to you, Chair Harrington.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the month of December and the December 1st, 2022 Washington County Board of Commissioners Roundtable. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and I'm joined by a full complement of district commissioners. Welcome back from vacation, Commissioner Willie. Also here, Commissioners Tree, Spy, and Rogers. And on Zoom, we have Mark Jockers from Clean Water Services, and I am enjoying your snowflake background.
December 1st.
Yes, yes, it is indeed. So welcome, everyone. The first item on our agenda is just kickoff and a rolling agenda review. I don't have any informational updates that I recall. I do want to bring your attention to the rolling agenda under the column of January 17th. We have our annual meeting with the Homeless Advisory Committee, or is it Housing Advisory Committee? To me, they're solving housing affordability and homelessness together, but that's on Friday, January 20th. So please make note of that. That's what that heads up notice is all about. Then also on February 21st, we have a safety walkthrough. Also, it's pretty obvious in the rolling agenda, but we are not having commissioner meetings the week of, well, on February 14th.
It's NACO, right?
Yes, yes, indeed it is. So I just wanted to make sure I did my part to bring those advanced things to our attention. Anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just make note of December, as we have only 2 meetings in December, they are 2 jam-packed days. Yesterday, every Wednesday, for context, staff meet to review rolling agenda and try to balance out your commissioner meetings. We really had a challenge looking at December 13th and are proposing to actually, instead of starting at 2 p.m., starting at 1 p.m. Part of that is a time-sensitive executive session that we need to hold relative to labor negotiations on that date, as well as we just can't move anything. So we're just challenged by time.
Yeah.
In addition to that, as staff are preparing their budget, looking and also doing continued work on looking at how we deliver services, how we finance our services. Within HHS, they've been looking at our environmental health inspection fee structure. And ideally, we would have liked to get it to the board as an update on the 13th so that the department can use board direction in building their base budget. Due to timing, I've asked staff to issue a briefing memo to the board. You can have an opportunity for one-on-one to ask questions. And within that briefing memo, there will be a staff recommendation if for a fee structure that the staff will use in building the base budget. Looking to January roundtables, in my conversation with the chair just this week, really looking at reserving that time for board discussion around strategic plan and also finances. We'd be targeting the first meeting in January to have an opportunity for the board to, in an open session, to have a Q&A. This process would allow staff to still move forward with the budget process and still allow that important time for policy direction from the board.
So I want to make sure I've heard this correctly as I'm on my second dose of caffeine for the day. It's a little unusual for me. So it's a heads up that that week of the 13th we'll be getting a memo.
Hopefully sooner than the 13th.
Okay. Should I be thinking that if I need some one-on-one time that I should be trying to have it that week as well?
I will ask that staff be clear, staff availability due to holiday vacations, if it's that week or the following
Okay.
week, on what their window of time is.
Okay,
Or Chair, if you feel actually, given the content, really want to ensure there's robust discussion at the board, for the board opportunity in the roundtable, we can ensure that time
okay.
is slot.
You still want to have the roundtable on the 5th?
Mhm.
We can definitely, I mean,
Yep.
agenda wise. So for our roundtables in 2023, so I spend a bunch of time helping staff prepare different presentations to make highest and best use of your time, and also work with Ms. Angie and her team as she deems appropriate to try and plan things out to maximize your time. In 2023, I'm going to be doing less of that, heads up. But I was also thinking for roundtables in 2023, that we should ensure that Ms. Angie and her staff have the availability of additional meeting time, whether, no matter what they're called, labeled, there may need to be some date scheduling flexibility. So just a heads up, we're trying to sort out what would work best for staff preparing of information, because we have a mega project of budget and finance multi-year improvement, but more intensive this year than it was last year. And problem solving will advance year to year. And then also around strategic planning. So we're not going to, I'm not thinking of using roundtables the same way we have been using them. I think we've got our planning and processing down pretty well. Plus, personnel wise, we're a stable board, so it's not like we have to keep going through storming, norming, and performing like some of our peer commissions. So just trying to continue to be respectful of your time and highest and best use. So as we receive rolling agendas, there may be some date changes. Ms. Angie and her team are really work with your policy assistants to know when your committee meetings are, to try and make sure there's some structure in there so you're not having schedule whiplash. So it's
So does
a
that,
multi-party equation.
so I think what I'm hearing you say is that we're going to try to use the roundtable time in a more flexible manner based on what the staff needs
Yep.
are, instead of
Yeah.
us driving it.
I've tried though with roundtables to keep them that first Thursday
Right.
of the month. So there's been some level of predictability for you, and cancel afternoon sessions with enough advance notice so you can take advantage of that time. And we just don't know yet enough about the level of needs and how things will transpire in 2023. It will become clearer the closer we get to it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, if I can just add, it is important, and I'm saying this also for direction for staff who may be listening at this point in time. Roundtable items should be in the roundtable spirit. That is the time for the board to, as a group, as colleagues, to discuss an item. So that we will not be supplanting work session items in roundtable. So work session items should be work session items, and then relevant board items should be at board meetings.
I appreciate that clarity.
So as things flex, we'll just use leadership communication to highlight, just like I did here today, if something's changed or whatnot. Okay. That's it from me. Ready for the next topic? Design the future update. Ta-da! Hello, future.
Future is here. Clerk Moss, can I have the clicker, please? Oh, thank you.
Watch out when the lawyer in the room has the clicker.
Trouble.
You were controlling the clicker. So board, in my conversations, with the chair in designing the roundtable, agendas, the chair had mentioned it would be helpful as an end of year, just an update on the progress and direction for Design the Future. So I will walk through a brief PowerPoint. I also want to just draw your reference to the nice pictorial item on the wall. This is a result of a department director, which we call our leadership team retreat that we held this year, talking about how are we designing the future and moving towards a one Washington County.
I will
So-
email that to all the commissioners right now, so
Yeah, I
that
was just gonna
we
say. this is
don't
not
all-
Posted.
Yeah, Clerk Moss will be
It
posting
will
it
be
in
posted momentarily.
Yep.
What are we talking? What's not,
The
the,
PowerPoint.
Yep,
is-
yep.
I thought you meant the
The
map,
PowerPoint and the picture, yeah.
both.
So this presentation is intended just to give the board a brief update on Design the Future and the direction to a one Washington County. So at this point, I do want to start talking about how Design the Future and how it what it entails and how it relates to other major initiatives underway. So what is Design the Future? We have reviewed this slide in the past, but just as a grounding and background, when it comes to pursuing our public service mission, Washington County is at and continues to be at a unique moment in its history for identifying opportunities to improve our approach to providing our services and for being more responsive to community need. Our organization and its relationship with the community have rapidly changed, and I think we all feel the change continues to be rapid since our current, the previous organizational structure was put in place. These challenges are multifaceted that we face as an agency and range across several systems of service. They impact our community partners, our other local jurisdictions, and we share a common thread: the need for well-trained, well-resourced, diverse, and inclusive workforce that can function across disciplines and organizational structures. So Design the Future continues to be an initiative led by the County Administration Office to create an organization that's leading edge, mission-focused, and human-centered. So what will Design the Future do? As we move forward with these changingly rapid conditions our community faces and our organization faces, we need to build shared knowledge systems, structures, and processes. As your board is aware, we have been facing retirements within the agency. We have, for example, our juvenile services and community corrections directors are in the process of recruitment due to retirement. So how do we build not only at that level, but looking down throughout the organization, shared knowledge so that we have seamless service delivery, and that laws that retention of historical knowledge is retained within our organization, provide more opportunities for shared governance and decision-making. This is not only within our community, but it's across departments, within departments. So breaking down the silos that are easily built within government due to the type of services that we provide. Centering equity within the organization in service to the full community. With your board's leadership, we have, as you know, through the quarterly updates from our Office of Equity and Inclusion, we're making great headway in the space of equity. And while we do have an office, this work is really cross-departmental, in, out, and around, because we all need to own EDI principles and putting that work into action. It's not just contained within the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Enable iterative refinement and improvement. This is innovation. Change is constant, change is real. So how do we continue to innovate, take appropriate risks as a local government to improve service delivery? And create organizational identity, promoting effectiveness, creativity, and more support for our employees. What's our brand? How are we recruiting that next generation of local government employees? And how do we create those career ladders and succession opportunities for our employees within Washington County to retain a quality workforce? So this slide is the start of a One Washington County roadmap. As you see, there's multiple lanes, and I'll take this opportunity to kind of walk through how each of these lanes relate to one another. The map combines multiple areas of organization-wide work, all traveling in a coordinated journey towards the same outcome and vision of a One Washington County organization, better serving the community. We're going to take a brief look today. We have very limited time, so we'll continue to build on this through this coming year, some of the big picture projects and initiatives, and talk through how they relate to one another. And there is no way that I can depict all the work going on throughout Washington County that connects to this roadmap. So please ask questions along the way, because we have many initiatives that are large scale, multi-departmental that are connecting to this roadmap. Some of the road signs on this map will indicate specific areas of work, starting with equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's very intentional that this lane is within the middle of the road that connects. This is part of the county's work, occupying the center of our roadmap. Since the adoption of the board's equity resolution in February of 2020, our Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement has helped us create efforts such as the Advisory Council on Racial Equity, which is our community-facing advisory group, and the Equity Leadership Council, which is internally facing, which I co-chair with Commissioner Fye, and we're making great progress on a One Washington County approach on embedding equity within our operating practice. And then we have several other committees that are focused within the organization, advancing our organization's equity work. These are cross-departmental groups, which within management theory and structures are sometimes called parallel teams. So it's an opportunity for departments from multiple areas, levels in the organization to come together focused on one common goal. It also provides leadership opportunities for staff. We have staff who serve in a chair or co-chair role that may not have that type of leadership opportunity or development otherwise. We hope to use that as a model and continue to build that cross-departmental or parallel team model out to decision-making and organizational-wide efforts in Washington County. As I indicated, your board receives quarterly updates on this work, so I'm not going to spend time today talking about our EDI work. So let's move on to the next roadmap. So as your board is aware, you develop a list of multi-year projects meant to address key areas of service to the community that you wish to focus on. Several of these initiatives have already begun, and they're likely to expand. Some examples include economic development, increasing our supply of affordable housing, and also our continued climate conversation and work. Other initiatives are in the early stages of development and will begin moving more quickly as planning intensifies and resources are identified. Examples are broadband strategy using the ARPA funds that your board has allocated, and our current development of the Center for Addiction Triage and Treatment. Planning, which we need to begin for our courthouse expansion, as well as other facilities. Other facilities you will hear in our first draft of CIP coming up this month. In January of 2023 at your roundtable, we'll be coming back to your board to share how this work will transition in strategic planning next steps, so we can evolve the work that your board has put in place into initiatives, into strategic plan. And really hearing the board's last discussion on strategic planning, and Commissioner Fye, I think you had articulated, let's get to work and let's get this plan done and started.
Don't we need to start it before we get it done?
Get it right. Sorry, I like to focus on getting to outcomes. I'm sorry. We need to get started.
Meeting touches. Oh, you know, the old.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Ready, fire, aim.
Yeah, I know. As you can tell, I'm eager to get started on it as well. So let's move on to the next roadmap. This is a service level assessment, which is a important next roadmap on the One Washington County journey. It isn't vital that we first understand where we currently are with various systems of service, including the service level and support for each of them. What are the service levels within land use and transportation, and what are the outcomes that we're trying to strive for, and what's the funding model for those outcomes? So this links to our financial sustainability plan as well. The county has conducted similar inventories of service levels and funding streams before. There was a PSU study in 1984, and there was an auditor's report as recent, I should say as recent, in 2004, 2005, both of which preceded a strategic planning process to the organization. We have internally started this work with a pilot project in land use and transportation. This is a significant lift, and we are currently using that as foundational work for an RFP process to secure outside resources to complete this on a countywide level. We will be presenting in early 2023 what that first look and what the learning was in the LUT department. Next slide. So here we go to the community strategic plan, which is a board-led initiative, which will be informed and supported by all other initiatives shown on this map so that the board can consider revisions to One Washington County's framework of documents. After robust community engagement, discussion, we will ultimately land at a strategic plan, but we do, as we were chuckling before, just need to get started to get to that point. And there will be several several phases so that we can feel successful along the way and iterate on what we learn. As I indicated, we will be coming back to your board in January of 2023 to propose a approach and to get to work.
Hey, just ask a
Mhm.
question. And I like the information you're providing here. It seems like, though, the strategic plan should be in a different place. Shouldn't we have a strategic plan to drive our initiatives and our services and those kinds of things? Seems like strategic plan is too far down the road. So what am I missing there?
So we're building on each of these roadmaps. For right now, we have the board initiatives. We don't have a current service level inventory to understand what we do as a county.
Right?
And so what are we doing? So then that will be used to inform the strategic plan. So in essence, you're kind of going down the road and you're building on the information that you have along the way.
We do have a strategic plan.
Mhm.
It's just as old.
Are we talking about the old one?
It's just
We do.
It's still the.
It's still there.
adopted Strategic plan.
I think it was adopted, was it? I thought it was a draft, but
No,
anyway.
It was adopted several decades ago,
Mm,
and
okay.
there were attempts to update it that, you're correct, weren't adopted. But it's still there. So we're not without one, but what we are going through is a comprehensive update of how we do our work, what that work is, how we deliver it, what may be the current demands of today and into future years, so that we can see, who knows, maybe the next community strategic plan will look somewhat, we may be able to recognize parts that are similar to the current one when we have the new one, but there may be some newer parts.
Yeah, I think maybe my chain of command, if I can use it.
Mhm.
Perspective is just 180 degrees of this. I thought the strategic plan drove everything else. I'm perfectly fine with this. I like everything that you've done here, and everything else is just, yeah, that was a little bit of a backward thinking for me. So anyway,
Yeah.
this will be fine. I like it. I certainly like the work that you've done on this. I'm not advocating for something else. It'll be a little bit of a mind change for me.
So the goal, as I understand from the board and what our previous discussions, as we move forward, the strategic plan will be acting in the fashion that you're talking about, Jerry, and it will be connected to our financial plan as well. I want to take you back to the GFOA presentation, rethinking budgeting, rethinking strategic planning. We don't have that type of strategic plan right now. So that's where we're going
Right.
to get to that type that you're asking for.
Okay. Now, again, it's just a change in my, I guess, perception of a strategic plan as it builds into everything else. So this is fine. I like this. So
Okay, other questions?
No,
Is
Jerry, no, I just say that
Yep.
Jerry's perceptions are right. I look at it entirely different too, but that's fine. I always start from what are your tenets or principles, where you're at. And then any updates, I mean, you can do 1,000 more things, use constitution. Put certain parameters and just said this, but that's why we have articles that change that. And that's why we have laws that change that. There can be many, many updates, but what's that basic core?
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is because we're waiting for that downstream. So it's problematic.
So those two questions will be prepared to answer at the January 2023 roundtable, because you're exactly right. We need to identify those. And that's,
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would bring it up front too, but one other thing I think, just as a resource, and I won't dwell on this, your approach between your departments is very similar to a business model that Disney did. And if you ever want to have a good business case study, take a look at what Disney did. Like many corporations, they have many business activities within the corporation. And so their model was to start having people cross conversation with each other. So that their hotel people, which is a business unit, their restaurants, which is another business unit, which their parks, another business unit, which their properties is another business unit. They kind of understood what the other one was doing around, not detailed, but in general, so that they could cross-refer and cross-reference each other. And so it made it much smoother. So you're sort of talking about
Yep.
that. It's a good study if you ever want to look at it.
yeah, thank you for that. All right, so Design the Future is really internally facing work. So this is our work. It's a process and mechanism that we will lead to a One Washington County. It moves us forward to that vision in service to our community. This initiative promises to provide means for recommitting the organization to values, continuing to reset culture and improving its system and structures. Unlike some of the other initiatives that are shown on this roadmap, Design the Future is largely focused on the internal affairs of the operation. How do we operate in service to the community? And it includes gathering input from our fellow employees about how we shape our workplace culture, improve our systems, and adjust our structures. Just as your board has really sought to get community input and engagement from those closest to the problem, our community members, we need to do so also with our employees and look to our employees for their innovative ideas and how we can improve our workplace structures and systems. That said, Design the Future is intended to support all the other initiatives shown, including our internal and external initiatives. And that's part of the reason this road converges together, because we need our internal systems and our external facing work working seamlessly together in service. So some initiatives that really support Design the Future that are currently underway, we are in the process of conducting a financial department structural assessment. Greg Munn has presented to your board on modernizing financial planning and operations through the budget process and ensuring that our financial management practices meet industry standard GFOA recommendations. Some of these aspects include capital improvement planning. I do want to just ground the board. I'm anticipating the board will have further asks once we have our December 6th presentation with the first cut of the CIP, because it will not at that point be connected to a financial plan. It will just really be a list of projects as a first cut. Budget policy and then evolving our budget policy to ensure we have financial sustainability. Looking at our fund structure, you'll see some changes in the upcoming budget process and evolutions of our budget to outcomes-based budget that are ultimately linked to our strategic plan. So that is work that we're designing the future, intentionally tying both sides of the road together. We have conducted an RFP process for a human resources operational assessment. We have 7 respondents that currently are being interviewed. This is incredibly important because our employees, also known as human capital, is our most important resource to be able to execute on service delivery to the community. Some key points of just information: our class and comp has not been updated for over 20 years. Our workforce, our departments have changed significantly. So how does that relate to policy, thorough review of all of our policies and updating our policies with HR? And then also our performance evaluation system needs to be consistent and robust, which it's not right now. And that doesn't lead to continuous improvement as a workforce, and tying each of our performance, including your county administrators, to goals of the organization. This work will not be done overnight. So part of the operational assessment is creating that roadmap so that we can deliver and that we can modernize our current systems and structures that are in place.
I'd just like to comment there for a moment. Thank you for the focus on operational excellence, especially in all areas. I'm just comfortable talking about HR. And my experience has been that HR is always evolving anyway.
Mhm.
So it's not that other departments aren't always evolving, but when you're talking about your greatest capital investment, which is your people, we need to stay on top of that. So I really appreciate that. And I think that it's easy for any group to not do the HR and not encourage the HR involvement. So I'm really pleased that this is something that we're focusing on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Pam. You referred that we hadn't updated the class and comp for a number of years.
Mhm.
I thought and I don't know what you call it, our equal pay study was kind of a supplement to that, to make sure that we were on par, competitive. So what's the differentiation between the class and comp and what we have done?
So a class and comp study is, in essence, that's your foundation that determines your compensation bands, your employee classifications across the organization. Pay equity is, in essence, a layer on top of that, using your class and comp as a foundational lens. So we implemented pay equity lens with our current class and comp structure.
And the class comp work.
Well, if it's that old, I'd certainly agree with that. I guess I thought we were a little bit, because again, our focus has been always, at least in the last couple of years, has been competitive compensation. So I'm assuming we're there market wise and things like that. So
That's what had been brought to us, is market updates for the levels. But what all those job classifications are, how are they current relative to the operations of the organization as well as the industry of this government level service work. That foundational comprehensive review, I believe, is what we're trying to get at, has not gone through and updated it in quite some time.
So we're not just talking about money, we're talking about actually kind of a job description.
Yeah, all the
Yes.
categorization,
Yes.
everything, yeah.
All right.
And I
Yeah,
think
good,
we've seen kind of fixing different pieces and trying to band-aid things together to accommodate that. But now it's time to go. Okay.
I see. All right, thank you for that. That's clarification.
And the county is to be commended for the level of longevity that it's gotten out of these systems.
Mhm.
But as we're facing the challenges, the workforce transitions, I mean, that foundation has been showing strains. And so now we need to replace, if I could use an analogy, that crumbling brick foundation with a steel reinforced concrete foundation that is earthquake ready.
Seismically appropriate.
Just figured I'd slip that one in.
Think about seismic resilience when I talk about class and comp, but okay. But
Well, I
no,
was
thank
going
you
for
very
a
much.
physical analogy. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. So I do also kind of want to linking the two roads together and talking about assessments. It's not just our internally facing departments that are undergoing departmental assessments. I'm a firm believer that this looking at how you're doing your work on a routine basis is important. We all need to look at the mirror and sometimes change how and evolve how we do our work. So I commend WCCLS for taking the feedback through the latest IGA process and cities really asking for using an equity lens on the funding distribution and still providing adequate service level to our library partners and communities. And so WCCLS is currently undergoing an assessment and working with the cities to do such. And that will be used as a planning structure to base our next levy discussion on. So this isn't just internal, it's really that evolution of all departments embracing design the future, and we'll continuously design the future because we're continuously evolving. So really this road won't end. It will just continue to meet that one Washington County sunset.
Not to get away from that, from where you're going
Yep.
here, so, but the WCCLS evaluation is being done by that board. Who's doing that equity? Having that conversation.
Lisa Tattersall is contracted with a consultant to help with that work, and she is working with that board. Any assessment, organizational assessment results that we have, we will be sharing with your board as we move forward through those
Okay.
processes.
Not sure for WCCLS, the board is the right phrase. I know they have a stakeholder group, an executive leadership team. This is the board.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, you're correct.
Yep.
I didn't, that wasn't a correct.
I'm out of
terminology. I didn't know what you.
lingo,
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did mention before the equity committees and the parallel teams, cross-departmental teams that we have in place. Greg Munn and Steve King are new county's first budget manager. Will actually be putting together a cross-departmental budget transformation committee so that we have stakeholders across the organization involved in this work because it's not just about what central finance does, it has impacts on our various departments and service delivery models. So how do we really transform and design the future together? So those are just a few high-level highlights. We are working on an internal 2023 Design the Future work plan that we do plan to share with your board in early Q1 of 2023. I'm hopeful that we can get to a point by February that can be shared out. And then we ultimately are really striving for a One Washington County vision. The coordinated approach to design the future and your board's leadership is really leading us to that unified agency that we are serving our growing and diverse community with ever-changing needs. This idea of One Washington County is not the only aspect of a vision for the organization, but it is an important one, and it's a good starting place. Sometimes, and Chair, you said, sometimes we need to just get started. Over this next year and connected with budget conversations, I'll be holding employee forums to hear directly from employees. My next budget message in December to all employees will actually be offering employee Q&A sessions on the budget. Recently met with an employee who was like, this has never happened in Washington County. It's not only to inform, but it's also meant to engage employees with what ideas do they have? What efficiencies can we find? New ways of service delivery, and really encouraging that next model of leaders at all levels. So where are we going from here? What are the immediate next steps? As we've talked many times, the board led process to revise the community strategic plan. To help inform the plan, we will be conducting an organization-wide survey and hosting various venues to solicit input from our valued Washington County employees. So just as is important to solicit input from the community and have community engagement, we also need to recognize that our employees are key stakeholders in this process. In 2023, development of the county's first Design the Future work plan will be presented to the board. This will be the first time that we will have, similar to the capital improvement plan, internally facing work plan. So we'll continue to evolve and iterate as we move forward on that. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Commissioners, thoughts?
I have one, and that is just a question of, you had this nice presentation roadmap that was showing how you roll everything forward, and I understand that. But again, you can't hear me. Yeah. I need to learn to speak up. I understand that too.
We just need to move the mic to you.
In your presentation of your roadmap, one would infer that things were simply going to be recognized in terms of what they're doing, what people are doing and how they're doing it, and how you perform these services. In any business, what you do is you have a ramp off too. I didn't see any ramp off, and the ramp off would be, gee, we've analyzed and we understand that maybe it's not a service that we can perform. It's not economically feasible. In government, it might be, gee, we're doing things that maybe somebody else should be doing. This isn't, we're not, this isn't our expertise, or there's others who have as much expertise and can do that. I mean, a typical example would be cities, for instance, who could do things. So is that all part of what you're placing in there? I mean, I look at this
Yes.
streams to river, and I don't see anything that would divert any of that.
As we continue to design the future, become a high performing organization, it's important that we always look at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and should it shift how we're doing it? Does that mean stop, increase? There's multiple levers, and that will naturally be occurring through this budget process because of our financial reality. But it's good government to continue to look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, who it's serving, and how's it being paid for, all of those factors.
And who else could do it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that, I think that might be demonstrated under that service level management sign there. And there isn't a roadmap, there isn't a exit off that, because I think this is about how to get to one Washington County, but that's where
Where it would be.
that assessment, and you're absolutely right. That I do believe that, especially as we look at the budget and what we're capable of.
That's why this county historically always worked with the community-based organizations, because we understood we didn't have the resources to do all those things. And so what we did is we contracted with them. And I can remember 25 years ago being butt of a lot of jokes from other counties who said, that's not a real county, we do all these things, and you guys aren't really performing the way we perform. And our rebuttal always was, no, we're doing it right.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're making certain it's more holistic model than what you're talking about. But I think that there is some outsourcing that might be there. So anyway, you're considering it. So that's good.
Yeah, well, and I think that practice is actually still in place. Commissioner Rogers, as you were talking, I was, and granted, this is limited time money, but the CARES funding and ARPA, that wasn't all it was pushing out to community-based organizations who are a higher and better deliver of various services. And I think there's various opportunities that we need to continue to embrace that model, because government is not always the best provider, nor maybe in some ways the most efficient.
And I'll just chime in on that. I think that is part of the service paradigm toolkit. What I see we have done as we've been on the board together since 2019 is be clear about what are the outcomes we're expecting as a result of those investments, which hasn't always been clearly adopted, transparent, and so forth. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to really, Kevin has sent us that. And if you kind of, for me, you have to expand on it to read it all, but there's a lot of really good comments in there that
Background.
further define each one of those little road signs that we've got. And it's almost like, I don't know who was involved with all of that design and comments and things like that, but it's really good. And to me, your presentation was very good, Tanya, but this is where, to me, a lot of the real substance is, because it's kind of defines a perspective that isn't ours necessarily, maybe not even yours, but it's inclusive in everything that you're trying to do there. So
Yeah, so this work is reflective of a retreat we held with our department directors, office manager positions across the county late this summer. And so this is the collective work of a One Washington County approach. There are questions that came up, questions about capacity. Like, how do we get this work done with existing resources, coupled with excitement, desire for prioritization, and really hungry for prioritization, because we can't do it all. So I mean, this is really exciting. We keep this up in the conference room in the CAO office, but really wanted to pull that out and share this with your board, because it's great work.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will
First
note,
time we've seen it,
Yeah,
though, just
yeah.
to reiterate, we're being forced.
I guess it takes me a few times.
Well, that's true. And then really honing in, and like I said, expanding it on my screen to read the commentary on it provides a lot of substance on that. So it's really good.
Well, I'll just add that one of the things I appreciate about how we're going about this work is that we're being very deliberative about being transparent with our community about what we're doing, how we're doing it in service to them, and also transparent with our employees about why we're doing these things, how we're going about it, and doing all of this together. So thank you for continuing to take us new places.
And I'll add in, I echo the comments. This is a really good presentation, Tanya. Great job, and thank you. I think for me, like a desired outcome for this process, I didn't hear you mention, but I'm hoping that we can incorporate some way, like measures and targets that hopefully that we can connect it to the level of the responsibilities to the board, so that, you know, we can truly design the future for Washington County residents. And I'm really hoping through this process, you know, I'll call out 2 areas, and they're just on top of my head, but not picking on any of them, but hopefully to understand those 2 areas, if there are some archaic codes or policies in place that perhaps we can change to truly design a future that protects and serves everyone, not just certain people and not just people who have historically benefited these laws. And those two areas, not just picking on them, but public safety and justice and land use, I think will be two areas that I'm hoping that you'll come back with some, aha moments, some maybe disturbing or surprising that discoveries through this process, because I think the way I view, and I might not be alone in this, but a strategic plan for a county this size with this diversity should be the Bible that serves everyone, or the book of religion that serves, to just use that analogy, that serves everyone. And I think it can't just be words that are aspirational, but it have to have some accountability mechanisms built in. And I like your framing of designing the future, because that really creates a hope that we are going to do things differently, and that we are going to design a Washington County that worked for so long, but could be better.
So I'm going to hold that comment and bring that back when Rachel and I present back to the board on strategic planning process in 2023. So hold on that. Yes, and I hear you.
I've got a follow-up question, actually. That, to me, and we're using words maybe differently, but strategic plans like your mission statement in a business. Your business plan is quite different. Are you going to have are you merging the two? Or are you trying to have them the same? Or are you going to simply, that's why I keep going back to the US Constitution model and say, that's our, that's kind of our mission statement. That's what we do. And the business plan adapts all the new things that we might have done. I mean,
Yeah, so
I don't know
they're not the same, and we'll provide that further clarification in a pictorial, because even though it's on the same road, it's about being connected.
yeah,
These
so
should
you
be
understand-
tied together.
You
Yep.
understand that, and you're going to
Yes.
make them different.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I'm in agreement with that.
But they should be tied and connected.
It has to be.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yep. Good question.
Pardon me? Roy Roger made a comment that,
I didn't say anything.
yes, you did, but it's off comment.
I didn't make any comment.
That's not
Missed
for,
it. I was.
Yeah, I did too.
okay.
So yeah, I just emphasize saying this is a great work so far. You're giving us a whole different perspective. So congratulations on that. Please communicate that, because I know that there's been a lot of employee director input to this, and that's the critical part to it. To me, it's even more important than community engagement, because the employees are boots on the ground. And so I think that's the important part.
Good work, hard work,
Well, it's
more to follow.
the we. It's the we. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for the update. We'll move on then to County Council conversation on policy and procedures.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
This is the exciting
Oh,
stuff.
boy.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but you said.
Does this mean
More than that. Can we
we're
get
gonna
my
keep
PowerPoint?
going with pretty pictures, or?
No, this is just. a regular
Words.
PowerPoint. So,
Pretty pictures from an attorney slide presentation.
yeah. This is the exciting stuff. So.
Tom and I commonly joke on what we each think is exciting, and it's not always the same thing.
It's never the same. This is going to be a contrast to the last presentation. I asked the chair if I could have some time to talk to you. Joining the organization as a lawyer, you start looking for where the rules are and what they say. And there's some gaps.
Fresh eyes are wonderful.
Yeah.
Let
And-
it go.
And as a lawyer, I often get asked, well, how do we do this? And you look for a rule, and in a lot of cases, there isn't one. And some of them, the things that I found, it sort of worry me a lot. And so I asked for some time to present, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the policies and procedures and some suggestions that I think you should update for your own procedures, but also some things about how we organize the government, how this county works. And the county has evolved over time from a much smaller place, a much more rural place to a denser, more urban place with a lot of employees and a lot of diverse things that we do. And I'm not sure that the code and the charter have kept up. So I've got some thoughts, and the purpose here isn't to make any specific suggestions. My purpose really is to say, these are some things I've identified and get some feedback from you all on what should we do going forward? Are these things that you want to put on your work plan to consider? Some of them are pretty specific. Some of them are more global. And how should we talk about this going forward? So what I'd propose is if you're interested in some of the changes, for example, to the policies and procedures, I'd schedule a work session and go through specific language and changes to do those things. And for the charter changes that I'm thinking of, that's a bigger conversation. And do we want to do one at a time over the next few years? Are there things you should approach? Are there philosophical things you want to talk about? And again, we could do a work session on those things. And the third thing is codification, which when I get to, I'll talk to more specifically. There's a lot of things that this county has acted for most of its history through resolutions and orders. And those are awfully hard to find. And as the lawyer, I can find them for the most part, and Kevin is great at digging them up. But as a community member, to try to figure out how we operate, it's impossible. There's no way a community member could figure it out. And I'll give you some examples. So let's just start with the policies and procedures. Wow, no, that's right. Did you break it?
Yep.
There you go. So these are the three things I wanted to talk about. So these are some things I've identified in the rules of procedure. You all were talking about how you elect the vice chair. And there's a process that's been done where it rotates through the district commissioners in the order of the districts. That is not written down anywhere. And so I suggest we put it in the policies and procedures. And one of the things I should note is that in the procedures, it makes clear that any rule can be suspended, amended, or changed by a majority vote of the commission. So even though this is all written down and it's actually required by the charter that you have rules of procedure, you can at any meeting say, we don't want to follow that. And if majority of the commissioners agree, you don't have to follow that rule that day. But the idea of having rules is that it lets the community know how you're going to operate. And so if a community member, for some reason, wanted to know how you pick the next vice chair, they wouldn't know. And I didn't know until someone here said it. And then I asked Kevin.
Oh, no, I wrote it down.
You wrote it
in
down?
2019.
Okay,
It's been in the committee structure document since 2019.
okay. But it's-
Because I heard it said it wasn't written down.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it down.
Well, that's great.
Have maintained it since,
In that document, I'd like to put in the rules
because I'm like you. It's like,
the rules of procedure. And then agenda setting, there was some discussion about, well, how do these agendas get put together? And it's sort of like, well, the staff does it and brings it forward and you review the rolling agenda.
no, it follows the charter.
Yeah, but you could be more detailed about
It
it.
didn't exist before, Tom. Come on.
He's
Before
just trying to
2019.
codify.
So there's that. And then,
This is taking 2019 to 2022.
and then
Yes.
executive sessions, we are sort of challenged in coming back in person, how we handle them. So we've adopted, we have an informal rule now that says that if the executive sessions are done in person, and if a commissioner wants to act remotely, that's appropriate, but for nobody else. And so we're not going to schedule a hybrid executive session because a community member or a staff member or a member of the press wants to remote in. So that's the way we've been operating. So if we're doing it hybrid anyway, because a commissioner can't make it, well, then we'll let everybody else do hybrid. But if not, it's just so much cleaner to close the door and because with any executive session, my worry is always who's getting in through the portal. And we've actually had it accidentally accessed by people. So I don't want that to happen. So we try to limit the amount of hybrid. Now, there is a bill proposed for the legislature to require us to allow hybrid participation, remote participation by the press in executive sessions. So if that passes, then we would have to do that. But it hasn't passed yet. So it'll be introduced as legislative.
So could you the three bullets say require attendance in person, and is that for commissioners as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other two are we've had some, so as you probably all know, and we have personnel rules, and the personnel rules have a section on confidentiality. It does not apply to elected officials. So there is nothing that says that the statements made in executive session are confidential. As an attorney, my job is to make sure that my advice is conveyed confidentially. And if it breaks the privilege, if it's disclosed. The other thing that I'd like to do is have something that says who can waive the privilege. The privilege doesn't belong to me and it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the county. As the board of the county, if this came down to a court decision, what would happen would be, I'm sure the court would hold that the county would have, the board commission would have to vote as a majority, but it's not clear. And so I'd like a statement in the rules of procedure that says to waive waive the privilege to release any confidential information conveyed in an executive session requires a majority vote of the commission or a unanimous vote of the commission for that matter. And I've had one job where it had to be unanimous. And that's up to you. And again, I'm not drafting these things. These are areas I've identified that have raised questions for me about how we do things, and I'd like to see them written down. We don't do ordinances very often, something I'd like to change, but we don't. And so we always kind of stumble over the process, and I've stumbled over the process because it's in the charter but it's not really laid out well in the rules. And so I'd like to just sort of lay it out. In fact, we're having a debate right now about an item in the background that we're not really sure how to do the next public hearing. And so I'd like to see it laid out a little bit in more detail, particularly how we handle first readings. The auditor, we had this come up very recently. Yeah, sorry.
Did you skip public hearings?
Oh, clarify time limits. Yeah. So there are provisions that call for 5 minutes of public testimony and time limits in some public hearings. And our process is generally 2. And so I would just clarify that it's always 2 minutes or 3 or whatever you want, because it's very rare to go 5 minutes. It's 5 and then 10 for an organization.
I thought we cleaned that up
It's now,
in our rules of procedure.
it's still in my copy. So
So we cleaned it up for public hearings and ordinances. The point that I was thinking is the quasi judicial, which is
Oh,
more
got it.
land use technical for
okay.
appealing. So that's the one where we did
We
it.
did make some
there.
improvements recently on the clarification on public comment. That's what I was thinking of too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then there's a section in the rules on auditors' reports. It does not include anything about allowing the county administrator to respond. There is a provision in the charter that provides, so it would be nice to have a process with time limits on when the report should come in and how the response to give enough time to the county administrator to be able to do that. And then this is.
I would suggest, and I don't recall if it was written in the rules of procedure or in the Metro Charter, but we had a clear system that was known and followed, particularly on this. So,
Well, we have, the rules of procedure do have a section on auditors'
yes,
reports.
I know, and
It's
it
clear.
talks about 30 days. I've read each again yesterday for the gazillionth time.
Thank you for doing that.
But it isn't timely enough.
Well, we can have that conversation in a work session where I can bring back some proposed language and we can work through it. But my purpose here is to say, are these things you're interested in me bringing back to you? And just things I've sort of kept track of over the year and a half I've been here to sort of say, at some point we should fix this stuff.
Yep.
And so this is the opportunity for me to bring it forward to you. And I'm not tied to anything really. So there's a section in the rules that say that we have to have paper copies lots of places. And that's sort of a theme that I think at some point we have to realize that people don't really go look at paper copies anymore. And you don't want to be violating your rules. But there's actually nothing in the rules, I think, that I may be a little confused, but I'm remembering correctly, that says it has to be on the website, which is where most people would get it and where most people are going to access it. So I would suggest we eliminate some of the paper copies or all of them and have, well, again,
There's one copy that I think needs to be available, and that is in the room when we meet physical.
Yeah.
We should not expect that in the moment people will have their phones, laptops and so forth. So,
Yeah.
I think we need to make it physically available in that instance.
You mean for the people that are attending the meeting or for the commission?
For access to I'm mostly concerned for our community.
I would agree.
Because we tend to have pretty good access, and also we're in control of pausing a meeting to get what information we need, whereas our community members aren't. So that's all.
Good for us on, yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate that the rules of procedure and the charter are available to us and the community, whether it's the website or whatever the technology that will prevail in 20 years, retaining that spirit that they will always be available in the means that are pervasive at the time. But having something that is
You're talking about things
tangible.
being stored though, is that correct? For archive type?
No, I'm talking about just availability. There's several lines in the,
Okay.
in the
All right.
procedure that say you have to have a copy here and you have to have a copy there. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure a lot of those copies are never looked at.
Right. And I agree with you on that.
But,
Yes.
and I
Yep.
recognize the importance of having one available for the community in the
Yeah.
room. That's,
And I also appreciate that the new website has changed the access a little bit in order to find the rules and procedure and the charter. The first search on our website directed me to Municode, which I can't stand as an interface. I know you love it. We've talked about this before, but under the information for the CAO's office, once again, it bugs me. You have to go through the CAO's office versus general government. It's not accessible via the board page.
it is though.
Not the new web page.
Well,
I checked yesterday afternoon.
I just should go through the iAgenda portal and it's,
No, that's different.
yeah.
I just used the simple search for charter or rules of procedure. It does get me access to the documents there without using the Municode tool. So,
So I wanted to pause here and just give you an opportunity to say how you'd like to proceed and if there are any other changes to the rules that you'd like to consider, and I can bring those forward as well.
I have a
Commissioner
quick
Klein.
question for you, Tom.
Yeah.
And perhaps I should pause and ask this other question to the board. Didn't we review this in 2021 or was that imagining? Okay, yeah, and so these are new in addition to what has been
Yes.
changed. Okay, my question to you is, last year, or was it this year, in our budgeting process, there was a time when we published a certain time on our agenda and we had to take a 1-hour break to meet the requirement. Is that in these procedures or is that in the charter that we need to,
Some of that's state law.
state law?
I mean, the budget process is pretty much dictated by state law.
So whatever we publish, it can fall into this procedure of time requirement.
They're correcting that, though, that we used to in the old days, we put them all just back to back. So
Yeah.
one stopped, the other one started, and you posted time certain, so you corrected that, I think.
We're going to correct that,
In the
or we're
future.
going to change that in this budget process. What is important in a publication is that you're clear in how the meeting will be structured.
So that's in our control.
Yeah.
But the time publication for the budget, okay, so we'll change, okay.
We've
But
taken
it
that
doesn't-
feedback. And if you
It doesn't fall into the rules and procedures
No.
here, it's just.
the one thing that I would like to get clarification on is in the rules and procedure on page 1, under clerk of the board, section A, in the second line, shall provide for a verbatim record. And I've had this conversation a couple of times over the last 4 years, and I believe we have written summaries that are adopted and available versus verbatim. And I believe state law also changed during my 20 years as an elected official, since we have video available, and there used to be an older system of only keeping audio available for 2 years. So I'm just not sure saying verbatim here is either reflective of our modern practices. So that's why I wanted to flag it. I don't know exactly if it should be kept or not. I just wanted to raise a flag and figure out how we make it clear. That's all.
Couldn't we provide that verbatim by directing them to the recording?
I think so. As the chair has said, the rules on record keeping for governing bodies have changed over the years. And I've looked at this in the last couple of months. I haven't looked at it recently. So I need to take another look and make sure that whatever the state law requires, we're at least compliant with that.
Yeah. And if, we have, I don't know if we retain the videos. Hasn't been that long since we've had the video, right? So if we're expecting the video will be available forever, that's one thing. But if we're only expecting it to be available for however many years, right? I don't know how long a verbatim record needs to be kept, for example.
Yeah, the Secretary of State has record retention requirements for all of those things.
Yeah. And so I'm fine in just being reminded here that having access to that video qualifies as verbatim. Works for me. It may have been when we talked about this before. I didn't go back to my 2018 copy of the rules. It may have said verbatim written record for all.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think the executive, going back to the executive session conversation, Tom, and mentioning that the state is entertaining the idea of a hybrid, and we are a hybrid county. I think you can bring back required attendance in person, but I think you should provide an exception in the need of quorum.
Yeah.
Because if 3 of us are absent, but we could all Zoom in. So I think that providing that.
Well, I wasn't intending that commissioners would have to attend in person. I meant that for everyone else.
I actually think,
I'm fine.
given the materials that we have and control of those materials, if we're doing things as a norm hybrid for commissioners, there are security problems there.
So in executive session, it's their information meetings, correct?
Yeah.
So, if we can't be there, we can get updates from you individually.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, and so
Quorum
quorum
not needed.
issues really wouldn't apply.
If we don't have a quorum, we don't have the meeting.
Well, and you don't really need a quorum for an executive session.
That's what
You
I'm
can't
saying.
take actions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
then.
that the
Yeah,
issue
but-
here is the safety of of the meeting. Isn't that the issue here?
Yes,
Is protecting the confidential information that we're discussing.
yes.
I think it makes sense that,
Require in person.
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think we can have a foresight and figure out where the state is going. If it's gonna be a hybrid model statewide and we're gonna have to implement, then do we need to? And the timing of it, probably an Aaron Doyle.
I think we should be testifying in that
Against that.
state against requiring executive sessions to be hybrid
Yeah. And it wasn't,
because of the nature of them.
it wasn't completely hybrid. It was only to allow the press to participate in a hybrid manner. Which is obviously easier for a reporter to be able to just sit at their desk and
Record.
come in.
Yeah, but then they
even more
don't see what
problematic.
materials we're having access to and utilized. It just,
Well,
it's too
so
fraught.
that's the discussion. I just wanted to make sure we had clear rules for us now, because we're kind of doing it ad hoc at this point. And so I think I'd like to have something in the rules. So I guess my question is, should I schedule a work session to bring back some proposals along these lines, or is there?
Yeah, I think that makes
Clarify the
sense.
verbatim.
I appreciate the work that you've done to make sure that we're on target and that we don't, this is pothole avoidance for me. And I appreciate that work.
So just for clarification, you were talking about that a vote, only takes 3 commissioners to vote for a certain.
To change a rule. Yeah.
Is there anywhere where that is more than 3? Is it 4? Is it unanimous, or just is across the board? Everything is 3.
Your rules say a majority, so it's 3.
Okay, and is your recommendation, or is there other situations where we should have more than a simple majority?
I would like to think about and have a discussion about waiving the executive, the attorney-client privilege.
To be unanimous.
To be unanimous. Because it's a major step.
Mhm.
And as I said, I've had,
What does that even mean, waiving the attorney-client privilege? Can you give us an example?
yeah, of course. So I come in and tell you that I think we should settle a case for $100,000. And I'm going to go negotiate. And obviously I don't want the other side to know how much authority I have, because I want to try to get it for less than the authority that I have. So that's a confidential communication. You could decide, well, we really do want them to know that. So a majority vote of the board could say, we're gonna waive the privilege and disclose the information that Tom told us. I mean, it's rare, but it does occur. And to protect the privilege, I think we should have a process. And I would recommend it be a supermajority or unanimous, because it's such an unusual thing. And obviously in that small example, which is a little absurd, I can't imagine anybody wanting to do that. It hurts the county, because it basically says we're going to settle this for $100,000, because they know no lawyer in the world is going to take less than the authority I have. So
we already have in our charter, section 33, section B, approval of at least 3 commissioners in attendance is required for any action.
yes,
Okay, so we have that coverage.
Yeah.
This is suggesting that for waiving the attorney-client privilege for executive session topics, he's suggesting unanimous really helps ensure that attorney-client privilege is met. And I would,
I think we're also, are you going to come back with this?
Yeah,
You're gonna
oh,
come
yeah.
back with
Yes.
it in a work session. So we're not deciding this right now, but we're deciding that we want to decide it. Is that?
so yeah, as again, my overview here is this is just some ideas I've had that I wanted to discuss with you before. And I'm very conscious of the fact that your work plan is going to be really full next year. And so I don't want to be bringing something in and just scheduling it if you're not interested.
I'm very interested.
Okay.
also, there is one duplicative item, section 32 of the charter makes it clear that the commissioner at large is the chair. And that same phrase is used as the first line in the rules of procedure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between the charter and the rules of the procedure. And so, but I'm happy to clear that up. I think that was done so that people could just find it in multiple places. As long as it's consistent, it doesn't hurt.
okay.
So,
Would you come back and, it sounds like you're getting a thumbs up to come
Yeah.
back and do but for the clarifying who can waive the attorney-client privilege, your recommendation around unanimous?
yeah,
Counties within, whether small or big, within Oregon that has same 5 board commissioners, who among them does this
okay. I don't know, but I'll look at
Yeah.
that.
would be helpful to.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about was codification. And let me just sort of may not be that interesting to you, but it's fascinating to me. So I'll bore you for a little bit. So as I said, the county has acted through resolution and order on many, many things. And I started reflecting on this when I represent the Office of the OEICE, the Office of Equity, Community Engagement, Inclusion and Community Engagement. And you adopted a resolution establishing the chief equity officer. You've done another resolution establishing ACRE. And for a community member to find that, you have to find those resolutions. So I've talked to the OEIC about putting together an ordinance that adds that to the code. So there'd be a section of the code that says we're going to establish the Office of OEIC. It shall be run by the chief equity officer, and there'll be this ACRES committee to advise it. And so that people who want to know that we're doing that can see that it's in the code. And of course, unfortunately, it would be in the Muni code system because that's the way the code works.
Well, hang on one sec. I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
Because the process already described in the charter and the rules of procedure talks about the board adopts, I think by resolution, the organizational structure.
Mhm.
And that included, and so that structure was used through the equity resolution and then the subsequent establishment of ACRE. And so you do have to know to search for Advisory Committee on Racial Equity or ACRE in order to find the resolution and order. So to me, if I heard you correctly, we did these things by resolution and order so that they would take effect. Where you lost me was just turning right around and doing another procedural legislative thing by ordinance. And it's like, and so I want to understand the purpose of codifying and the relationships between what needs to be codified and what it means to putting things in code gets really arduous. Oh, my assumption there was because of state requirements for notification, and maybe I'm spending too much time thinking about all these 20-day periods, 30 days periods, public hearings, when we've already taken a public action that says we want to have these positions, we want to have these advisory committees. So then let's get on with it. Why? I want to make sure we're just not being bureaucratic.
Yeah, I understand that. I appreciate the question. And perhaps OEICE was the wrong example because that's all fresh of mind and it's simple. There's only I think there's only the two resolutions. So it's relatively easy to find. Let me just show you an example that I have here. These are all the authorities that govern my office. And the first number for the resolutions and orders are the years that they were adopted. These are all currently in effect. So they go back as far as 1987. And I only know this because we keep them in a book. And
So I love that you've brought this forward.
Yeah.
Let me just start there, because this has never been shared with us by county council at all. In the three of us joining the commission. And I'm really interested in understanding the value of what this material encompasses for the county agency and for the role of the county council's office.
Mhm.
Just because it exists, is it useful, right?
Yeah.
How is it useful is really important. And quite frankly, thank you so much for bringing this forward, because how else would we even know?
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about, so the first one, authority to initiate litigation. That is, so from going back to 2010, there's a resolution order that replaced an early one from 1986 that says what authority my office has to initiate litigation.
So often in our charter, it talks about how we are a home rule county, but there are also county authorities by the state.
Mhm.
Where organizationally, and I can't remember, even though I read it all again yesterday, where do we establish that as a county agency, we need a county council? And that uh, our county council includes the following responsibilities.
Yeah.
So the way the charter is written, I just make the assumption that, well, if it's not here and we're doing it because we're a county, that either this is all modernization since that state stuff said this is what counties need to do for their legal coverage, or something altogether different.
I would say that what it is it provides more detail in the overall grant of authority. So the
Okay.
all the charter says is that we can have a county council pursuant to ORS, and there's a section in the ORS that talks about a county council, but that just says you can have a chief legal officer. And
Okay,
Uh,
okay,
so this provides the detail.
okay, thank you.
So I'll give you a recent example, that we had a denial of a concealed carry permit. There was this question about criminal history, and so it was denied, and the person's appealing. They go to court and the court reversed. And we want to appeal to the Court of Appeals because we think it's an important question. I don't know whether I have authority to do that. So I'm going to come and bring it to you and ask you for authority to do that, because it's not clear. And nobody knows, because they'd have to find resolution order 10-115 to figure out what authority I have to initiate litigation.
Well, and it bothers me that we've gone through a national search for a county council. And when we wrote the job description, we didn't have access to any of this.
Interesting. Yeah, well, so Chair, you're making.
Bummer, dude.
You're sort
And
of.
in your annual review, I want to make sure we're giving
So-
proper
Yeah,
performance value.
if we decide to do this, the codification thing for me would have two purposes. One, I think we should I'd like to go through all of those and update them so that they reflect current practice, or at least what we should be doing. But also, I'd like it to be so that someone looking for this could find it. If someone wanted to challenge what authority I had, or as a commissioner, you wanted to know what authority I have, you should be able to look somewhere and find it and not have to go to our manual and find all of these attachments. These are appendices to our policy, our office policy and procedures manual, and they've been well maintained. So I know that they're there, and I refer to them all the time. I mean, one of the interesting ones is the authority to hire outside counsel. The legal representation of employees, all of those things govern how I do business, but it's not very transparent. And so my thought is, I would love to just take all of this, put it in a single ordinance, have it in the code so that someone could find it whenever they're looking for it. And I'd like to go around and do that. Obviously, I know my department best, but the county administrative officer has the same sort of, I bet. I'd be willing to bet LUT's list is probably 10 times this size. And there is no transparency in this. And so for me, coming in as a new person, I ask the question, where do I find that? And I look at resolution and order number from 1986. So this is a huge project in the long term, but.
I mean, we're talking about things that were done last century.
Yes. Yes.
Or previous
That
centuries.
sounds so old.
Under prior management, for many of my questions about where and how, the answer was, oh, we have a minute order for that. We have a minute order for that. It's like, show me. Well, we'd have to go through a lot of paper. So I am confident that it may be enormous, but boy, is it necessary.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So what I'm thinking is that maybe I put together a work plan for this, and this obviously, I mean, the thing to do would be to spend a lot of money and have some consultant come in and do this, but I don't think that we're in a budget position to do that. I'd like to fix as much as I can. And I've got some experience in drafting code provisions, so I can do that. And the codifier will help with that as well. But I'd like to get this to a place where these things are easy to find, the authority that we have to do things that are not going back to looking at paper in my office, which is really the only, well, you probably could find them somewhere, but I'm not sure where you'd find them.
Well, also, thank you for agreeing to a slight delay in your annual performance review. Appreciate that. Could, in being the point person for it, could you please look at 87-49 and come back to us and see if we all need to go over that? I'm not looking to give myself homework assignments. Rather, I'm asking you if you could take a look at it and judge if I need that homework assignment.
And I will look to you for help in getting that written information, and I'll work with Michelle on this.
So
Thanks.
you're gonna do the codification.
Yeah.
How do we know that you haven't put some of your own interpretation of it into the codification versus the resolution of it?
Well, you can trust I will, but
Well, I have.
Well, and it's not.
I haven't
just a second, just a second.
so
It's not to imply that you wouldn't,
So
but just in case maybe you
the-
missed
the-
something or.
the process would be to adopt an ordinance that incorporates all of this. So, and I would present to you what changes I've made in red line. So you would see that this is this, and I would annotate it. It's not a simple job, but for example, authority to initiate litigation, I'd put those paragraphs together and I'd add some, because I think we need more authority than we have.
But did
And-
you codify something that hasn't been? Did you codify a resolution that you're amending?
No, what I would be doing, you'd be asking you to adopt an ordinance that then put it into the code. So you'd be creating a code section. And to do that, I'd have to show you what I was changing from existing. Which would be probably the first time you'd ever seen the existing.
Yes.
But so no, I don't think I try to slip one by you though.
Well, I wasn't implying that, Tom, but
But yeah,
obviously,
You
it's a pretty big.
it is a, yes. And remember, I'm just talking about, well, I think we should do OEIC because it's top of mind for me. And we should do my office because it's also top of mind for me. But when we start going to the other departments and looking at what's there,
Clean up.
but
Because there may be things that are totally extraneous now in the 21st century as well.
yeah, the requirement that we have a telephone operator. I don't know that we do, but we could have such a requirement somewhere.
My mom
Yeah.
is an operator, you know, when they had the switchboards.
Words.
I'm still having trouble with Catherine's reference of the last century, and I think,
That was yours.
I think I was born in that century. you know, I consider
I think we
myself that
all
old,
were.
you know,
Tom, I have a question. Could you codify,
'cause I have company.
isn't codifying mean had to be existed and passed? So
No, all
Codifying?
codifying means is you're passing an ordinance and telling our codifier to put it in the municipal code for the organization. And we don't do that very often because we act through resolution and order. What the charter says is the board can act through resolution or ordinance. And the practice has always been to just go by resolution and order. And maybe it may also say minute order or something like that.
We need to get a
not sure
clear
codify is
definition
the-
of what are we trying to make sure gets codified?
Yes.
And where is it appropriate for us to just do things by resolution and order?
That would be
that's-
wonderful. If
so-
we had a clear,
Could you repeat that? Yeah, I think you're saying that instead of just making it a resolution in order to require that it become codified as well. Is that what you're saying?
There's some things you want to codify.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, and
So-
other things are fine for resolution.
Just saying in
and
that
order.
Yeah.
category.
or
Okay.
minute, I get this question with some frequency. How should we do this? Should it be an ordinance? Should it be a resolution and order? Should it be a minute order? And so I kind of go back to past practice to see, well, how has it been done in the past and try to follow it that way. But I think that it would be great if we had some discussion about how the board should act in certain areas. And I'm not saying that I have any magic answer, but the challenge with acting as the board has in the past is that it can be really hard for the community to see what you've done because you're relying on a resolution and order that you can search through iAgenda and find if you know what you're looking for, but it's much more challenging than having it. out.
No, you can search by topics, which reveals
Yes.
the
Yes, you can.
resolution. Or you also have the record of each meeting. I mean,
Yep.
there are many different significant loaves of bread, not just breadcrumbs, to finding this stuff.
And I don't even understand how a minute order is, but how it's,
Well, it bothered me when I started the extent to which things were acted on with such, for a lack of transparency. Oh, we can just do it right in the meeting and it'll become a minute order. But it was not really transparent. It wasn't accessible. So that's where I've been leaning on resolutions and orders being done up front.
Yeah, well, and you still
No, our
do-
stuff results in minute orders.
Yeah, so anything on the consent agenda is generally
Recorded as.
recorded as a minute order.
Mm.
So you'll see things like, for example, we can't do a contract over a certain amount unless the board approves it. You'll see contracts on your agenda, and then when I go to approve it, I check to make sure the minute order was approved, and I look at the agenda item.
it's
If you
also
look at the
court order,
minutes,
right?
Say again?
It's also a court order.
No,
No,
no.
it's recorded.
Okay.
Tom, I have a question for you. You did a good job of identifying some county council authority.
Yeah.
Should we expect when you come back to this workshop for this topic, Tanya identify county administrator authority resolutions to codify as well?
Yes, I think that that's part of the process. But that's I mean, I'm talking longer term, not like in the next couple of months, because this was relatively simple. But again,
see.
these are all several pages. So putting them all together in something that makes sense is going to be something of a challenge. And then making sure that I'm not changing everything and tracking it back to make sure that you can see what I'm suggesting to change is a separate challenge. So this is a big job that I'm suggesting I take on, but I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think it was very important. In fact, I can't think of, well, the next topic I think is even more important. So we'll get to that. This is among the most important things I think we can do, because documenting how you process, documenting what you do, having the community being able to see how we work it's crucial.
Tom, I'd make.
So if I could go back
Sure.
to what I was saying earlier, but didn't get to finish. When Commissioner Willie, you were asking, how would we know? It's not only process wise because of the red line, but we're going to see it in our packets. And as part of our acting on it, we need to exercise discipline in trying to get our head around. Remember when we were new commissioners in 2019 and trying to understand how something worked? We'll set aside that we have had multi-year experience and put ourselves back in that frame of reference and saying, okay, what would I want to understand? How would I find it? Where would I find it? And then when I find it, what does that tell me as written? I think is something that's our role and responsibility that we need to take on, which involves work as well.
Yeah, I think what I was more concerned about is that I did not want to go in and read every one of those resolutions and orders and make sure that Tom had properly put it in there. So the red line explanation and all of that gave me that comfort that I could read that and know what changes were there.
Yeah, it'll be efficient.
What do they call that? Poetic license or something where you can change whatever it is. But anyway, yeah, no. So thank you.
Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just gonna comment. This is, and Jerry would know this because he's dealt with it as well. The IRS code started in 54. That was the original codification, and there's things that come forward. And the AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, they've had recodification and what normally happens. And that's why it's a good process is that you're always refining little things and you have something that has a little different take on a particular principle or a new standard. And so at some point you got to go back in and recodify and say, this is now the body that we're dealing with. So I just didn't know that you had that much time, Tom. That's what I'm.
Sure I do. So I guess the next step for me would be to schedule a work session where I put together a work plan to do this and work that through with the board, or maybe even another roundtable discussion. If this is something you're interested in pursuing, and figure out how we get this done. Again, I'm doing OEIC and my office are small projects. Doing the county administrator, LUT, assessment and taxation. I'm sure those are much larger projects because they do much more than we all do.
Do you have more resolutions or is this all
Oh,
Those-
that's his area.
Those are all the ones that we have for my area.
for your area?
Yeah.
There's no other ones?
As far as I know, those are the ones that are in our policy and procedures manuals that have been kept through the years.
To me, this falls under the operational excellence category, and it's really about making sure that all of our ducks are in a row about your area. And when I'm no longer here, I want to make sure that the next commissioner in this seat has the advantage of the work that we've done previously to make sure that everything's at a high level in relationship to operations. So that's the way I look at this.
And you can imagine for the next county administrator, for the next county council,
Mhm.
to be able to open something and say, oh, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do.
So I know we have some more material to go over. I would just like to close on this slide with one of the things that we need to figure out where it's appropriate to assign. The county was in a position with 2019 where for the first time in a very long time, if at all, there were 3 new commissioners. And what both the county council and the county administrator brought forward to me is they had not prepared for onboarding 3 new commissioners. And we know that there's a potential for bringing on 2 new ones at a time. And so I think it's in our best interest in leaving the county better off than the way we found it, to keep track of, try and provide an outline, a guide for what do new commissioners need to know, and understanding roles and responsibility. I've always, when I've run for office, read the charters and the rules of procedure as part of my decision-making to run for an office. And I was struck in my very first campaign in my fellow candidates that was not the norm. So I no longer take for granted that people that are running for office actually have a clue as to what the agency does that they're in fact running for, let alone the positions they're running for. So, but
We might all share that experience.
so I think it's incumbent upon us to at least leave an outline for the folks who will be in these positions in the future when we're not here, to say, here's how you need to hold yourself accountable. Here's a laundry list, checklist. That's all. So I know you have more.
It just, and this is actually the hard stuff. Potential charter revisions. So as you probably know, there's 2 ways to amend the Washington County Charter, one by amendment and the other is by revision. And I probably shouldn't have used the word revision because I'm not suggesting a revision. A revision is where you paddle a charter committee and they make suggestions, and it's sort of what the exercise Portland just went through. And it can get a little bit challenging. So I would suggest that if you do anything, you pick topics and do amendments, maybe 1 or 2 a year over a period of time. But these are just things that I wanted to raise that I've seen in reviewing the charter and just put them out there and see if you're interested. The top one, the form of government. This county operates under a county manager, county administrator form of government, where it basically models private business. You sit as the board of directors, you have a CEO who operates. And generally in charters that I've seen, there is some clear delineation between policymaking and administration, where and in fact, a board of directors for a company does not interfere with the administration, doesn't hiring and firing. They direct the CEO to do that. And that's the way you operate. And that's kind of done through ordinance here, but it's not reflected in the charter. I want to show you some charter language that surprised me.
But section 34 does say that we appoint a county administrator who's responsible to the board for the continuous administration of the affairs of county government.
Yep.
What continuous affairs are isn't necessarily clear. And then the county administrator's duties and responsibilities shall be more effectively set forth, more specifically set forth in an ordinance adopted by the board. And as I worked with Novak on the job description, I was challenged to find that ordinance.
So there is a code provision that delegates all administrative authority to the county administrator. And as I said, this board operates pretty well and understands the boundaries. You could, another board could come in and repeal that ordinance and start running the government itself.
Yep.
And that's why I would think that you'd want to have something in the charter that made it that division of authority clear. And this is a model city charter language that sort of is what I expected to see in the charter for our form of government, but isn't in there. And so I haven't changed this at all. This is just language. If there's an organization that has adopted a model city charter that is used around the country, and obviously it's a city, not a county, but it's
Okay, I did do that exercise and changed city council to county commissioners, city manager to county administrators, and it held together very, very well.
yes. Well, and it reflects the form of government that we operate under. But having this kind of language in the charter would help prevent some board of commissioners in the future from repealing the ordinance and taking over the government. The thing that comes up from time to time is we should fire this director or this employee. You would never do that, but there's nothing in the charter that prevents you from doing that. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do that, but it worries me that this kind of that paragraph C there, except for the purpose of inquiries and investigations, the council members shall deal with the city office employees who are subject to direction through the city manager solely through the city manager. I didn't see that kind of language in the charter. This is a big discussion to have, although what I'm really talking about is putting into the charter language that reflects how this government actually operates.
I am in favor of doing this. I think that we've seen in counties around our own state behavior that is not consistent with what their history has been. I want to protect, again, I'm going to say, I want to protect the future here. And I believe that this model city or model charter is appropriate to the way we operate. So I know we're not discussing it here. I'd like to discuss this and with implementation.
So, okay, I could, Commissioner.
No, go ahead, finish your
No,
sentence.
I was just gonna say I can bring this something back, but I've got
I
other.
agree with
suggestions.
what Pat said. The only question I have is, where does it say that we are the ones that hire and fire?
Oh, that's in the
Charter.
Charter.
That's
Okay.
clear.
That's
Okay,
clear.
and so this would not
Interfere with that.
interfere with that?
No.
Nope. In terms of operation, section 31, powers of the commission, and it's a very simple paragraph. The board shall be the policy determining body of the county.
Yes.
That's where I have interpreted that, except as listed for the employees that report to the board, none of the employees report to the board. And so
And there-
what we've been doing is per that,
Yeah.
but I guess maybe that's. just
you have this other
because-
section that says that you have all administrative powers.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well,
I understand. And
It's still there. I agree, but
I guess we're more honorable
well,
than nefarious.
and Catherine, that's a great point. The time to make this change is when you don't have a problem.
Yes, you're right.
Doing this in the context that Commissioner Treese talked about, where you've got some dispute because there's a commissioner or commissioners who are doing things interfering with the government, that would be harder. We don't have that problem now.
And I was trained up at Metro too, so Yeah, where a lot of things are clear.
So I'm very conscious of time. I only asked for an hour for this because I viewed it as a high level overview, but I want to go through some things. And there's a requirement that you keep a journal and we cover that in the rules by saying that the minutes are the journal. So it's okay, but we might want to get rid of some of the archaic language that's in the charter.
Oh, okay.
The ordinance reading requirement, I love
Can we
being able
please
to read it, but
do-
we could take care, I mean, that was for a time when the only way people could understand what was an ordinance is by hearing it read. Now they see copies available through many scenes.
That's not a state requirement, that we have to say, we're
No.
gonna read this by.
No, that's in
Title
the
only.
charter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, drives me crazy. This
Yeah.
next one, we already have it on pages 12 of 15 in the charter.
Yeah, so this is just something I wanted to raise, and this is just my own perspective. But when you have a provision for electing officers in May, you end up with with the possibility of having someone who's a lame duck for 7 months. And so my thought was you could change the charter to have, if there's less than 3 candidates, to have the election in November. All right, well,
Less than 3.
less than 3. So if you only had 2 candidates file, they wouldn't be on the May ballot, they would be on the November ballot.
Why is that
Oh,
different
that
than
gets-
like the district commissioners?
It's not, you could do it for district commissioners too, but I didn't want to mess with that. I'm just talking about the sheriff and the auditor.
And speaking from experience, I'm just going to say that being elected in May as a district commissioner the first time, it was helpful to have that 7-month preparation time for me.
Yep.
And I didn't perceive that it made the sitting commissioner a lame duck.
Yeah.
And I defer to Roy was there,
I think he felt that way.
well. I'm
Well,
sure-
by his own doing though, because he announced he wasn't going to run for so long and.
Again, these are just my observations and you have to say, we have just had a situation with the auditor who was here for 7 months
Mhm.
and it was a challenge. And so.
For a variety of reasons that were addressed
Yeah,
properly in different ways.
And I do think it opens the door to the district roles as well.
yeah. It's a question. I'd never seen that long a period between an election and taking office in my life.
Oh, I have. It's quite prevalent here in Oregon.
In Oregon,
and-
it's common in Oregon. It's not
Get
common
used
in
to
other
it.
places. Well,
Because otherwise it's too bloody confusing.
all right, again,
Too many if then else's.
I wouldn't be.
well,
Wouldn't start there at all.
Yeah, I think Kevin Teeter was elected in the May.
Well, that's
election.
because
City
no,
Council?
Beaverton's got it
different?
different. And when they did a charter update, they neglected to clear it up.
Ah,
They don't take office as of May. It's just that they use May to winnow it down to a top one, but they neglected to remove making it final as our charter does in May versus
It was an
duplicative.
administrative issue.
because he was on like
They just
until
did
this
stuff
election.
In their charter review,
okay, so
which it was done by the city council, as the mayor didn't change the charter.
the next one, newspaper publication, we have several areas in the charter where we're required to public notice in the newspaper. And I don't know anybody who gets their information by reading the legal notices in the newspaper. They're tiny print and
This is where I think our notices need to be publicly available
Yeah.
as we make as we have standards for making everything publicly available, right? For today's parlance, we should have a notice page on our website, right? And a system by which when term for notices are over, the posting just expires, right? But there's a place that everyone can always go.
Yep.
Um,
but right now we're required to publish them in newspapers,
yes,
and the newspapers like, because we pay for advertising time, but
I know, but like you said, give you a
There's
magnum.
an entire section in the Forest Grove Times. There's an entire section of those notices.
Yes.
It amazes me, just. And you're
And
right. it's small
somebody-
print And it's
yeah.
just columns of information. Going, who the hell reads these things anybody?
And some bodies have adopted rules and procedures where they just post a much smaller notice that says, we have a notice of this type and
Go-
go to
go
the
here.
web page here.
Mhm.
And so for the last one, well, notice by email, we have a lot of things that say we send them by regular mail. There's no real authorization in the charter for some of these things for email. And if people want to receive notice by email or another, just having other alternatives as we all go through different technologies, notice by mail is a little bit archaic. And yet we're required to do it and probably spend a significant amount of funds doing these things that really don't add to the transparency at all.
Could I ask a move up overview question? As we go through this in the next sessions, would there be public comment on this?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, so this isn't something we do in a vacuum.
no, and then.
Okay,
it-
and the reason I'm asking the question is I'm thinking about hearing from others about newspaper publication. That's why I'm just trying to make sure I understand what our public wants
Yes.
as we move forward.
And of course, they'd have to vote on it. This would have to go on the ballot, any of these.
Well,
changes.
that's very true. Sorry.
So-
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wanted to talk a little about the auditor provisions. Christina Adams-Wamberg has joined me here today. She's been sitting here quietly all this time. So she and I talked about, there are provisions in the charter about the auditor that are somewhat out of date. There's a certification that doesn't exist anymore in there. There's a lengthy residency requirement, or it's just a short residency.
As for
requirement.
us.
No, I think yours is 2 years and that's 6 months.
Ours is
No,
in
there's
6 months.
no, the
No,
audit.
yours is 2 years.
Oh,
Auditor's 6 months.
Yeah, the auditors are 6 months.
well, part of that is because of the credentialing.
Yeah.
So,
So Christine, do you want to talk a little bit about these or you want to? It's up to you if you want to hear from Christine. I have her list.
section 46.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's another section too.
Come on up.
And then I have some questions as well, so.
So, members of the board, for the record, my name is Christine Adams-Wamberg. I'm the auditor-elect and I'll be taking office in January. There were some provisions that I've looked through the charter that I do believe need to be updated. I don't believe this has been updated since 1981 when it was first put in. So it has,
Those sections referring to the auditor, you mean?
yes, the section's referring to the county auditor.
Yeah.
So first is related actually to one of the certifications that is a qualification for auditor. It's referred to as the CGAP, basically a certified government auditing professional. That certification is no longer offered by the Institute of Internal Auditors. It's really old, it's archaic. They're not supporting it anymore, so I don't think that that is a good qualification to have for a county auditor position. The minimum residency is 6 months for auditor, which I was very surprised by. I don't know why it is different than a county commissioner or some of the other elected officials for the county. It seems very odd. Some of the other items that are not in there but need to be in there, if you look at kind of model legislation for elected auditors or even audit functions in general, would be that we do our audits in accordance with various auditing standards, whether they be for the Institute of Internal Auditors or the government auditing standards, which are my favorites personally. Love those. Some of the other things that I'm looking for are auditor access to information. That is always going to be something that we are looking for. Multnomah County actually just adopted a revision to its charter with regard to its auditor access to information, and I got some really good feedback from them. Right to audit clause for county contracts.
Can I go back? What do you-
Yes.
What kind of information do you want to access that you don't?
I would say that there is sometimes a challenge in working with some of the departments in terms of being able to get access to information in a timely manner.
You're not looking for confidential information that's outside.
It could be confidential information, but that would be something that we would work with county counsel and the county administrative office in terms of what
Could I
that
suggest that
confidentiality
we
would be.
set up a different work session? And as part of that, we also open up the process that the auditor uses.
It's a good idea. I think that's one.
I think I would ask the question to the board. There are at least two of us that are interested in seeing
Mhm.
some modernization. But where we do that, whether it's through charter revisions, rules of procedure, or what have you, or codifying things, is also a pertinent question. But rather than trying to come up with a list of specific items, I think this is what you've brought forward at this stage is, yeah, it is reasonable to take a look.
And, and that was all my intent, was to just sort of see if these are things that you want to consider for your work plan. So what I heard was, just to summarize, that you want me to bring back the changes to the rules of procedure that we've discussed. You want me to bring back a work plan for my little codification project. And you'd like to sort of consider charter changes. And so perhaps what I should do is schedule two different work sessions, one for the charter changes that I've talked about with that, and one especially for the auditor's office.
Well, I don't want to close it there.
Yeah.
I would like to see, as part of those next steps, some proceeding or having the option of proceeding down a path of just having some technical cleanups. Right, because those are much clearer and specific, easier to get onto the ballot than other kinds of updates.
And would it be okay? So when I was thinking about a work session on charter amendments, I could bring forward proposals, and then we could talk about priorities and which ones you'd like to go forward on. As I said at the beginning, I'm
For the
thinking
next
about
steps.
the next few months. I'm thinking about the next few years to get all of this done.
We, believe me, our next few months
I'm
are
very
jam-packed
cognizant.
already.
Yeah, of your work plan is pretty full.
But some of what are appropriate cleanup updates we could get on the ballot much faster. I'm not suggesting May of next year, don't worry. But are easier than
Madam
others.
Chair, I would welcome to have a conversation with the board about the auditor provisions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought we already
Yeah.
included that
Yeah.
in the work session. That's what that language is all about. Could we also spend a little bit of time to see, I know I have at least one question to go over or to add to the list. So
To the charter review list.
yeah. And that is, this particular one is a clarification on the very last page, 15 of 15 under 107, 105. On the citizen assistance, establishing a citizen involvement program that ensures the opportunity for citizens. And once again, another cleanup thing, the use of the word citizen versus community member, resident, to be involved in all phases of the land use planning process. The way we operate right now, or at least as long as we've been on the board, is open and transparent. And what I'm interested in knowing is how we can do things efficiently and effectively, given the tools that are available to us in the 21st century, and continuing to be open and transparent. So we have, this provision doesn't say we have to continue operating the CCI and CPO program that was adopted in a resolution back in the 80s, right? This says that we can do an update, and we do that by an ordinance or resolution in order to establish that process. And I know that we have a revisioning process going on right now. This section defines what we have to do, and anything else is above and beyond that. The board gets to decide if we want a resource or not. So, and I think that's, to me, that's the fundamental question in terms of the re-envisioning. That's a hard word for my tongue. And I'd like to see us get some clarity on that in 2023. Totally independent of the strategic roadmap. That's what I'm trying to get at. This tells us minimally what we have to do. And I'd like to just ensure that we're able to take a look in 2023 to make sure we have an updated ordinance or resolution to just operationalize the minimum in our 2020s context. That's all. It's not cutting anything, rather it's clarifying it in how we do it now. That's all.
Well, thank you all so much for the active participation in what is maybe a mundane subject, but it's really interesting to me. So,
It's really important, I think, Tom, that we all completely understand the rules.
Yeah.
And the places that we need to modify or clarify, so.
Yeah.
Thanks for being willing to do this. Codification's a big deal.
Yeah, I know.
So we've given us all well, you've got the biggest homework assignments. We've got ourselves at least a few different work sessions that we've stacked up and assigned ourselves. So 2023 is going to be a busy, busy year. And I want to thank you, Commissioner Willie, for being ahead of all of us in role modeling, getting vacations into the rolling agenda, because it's right there in February. So I don't usually get my New Year act together until New Year's
Pointing to
weekend.
me, because she said on the phone, have you got anything planned? Like Jerry, I go, no, and she says, you need to correct your behavior, and I think she's right.
All you have to do is have a wife that says, we were gonna go.
Oh, yeah.
You can meet me at the airport or not.
Darn, I don't have one of those. That's my problem.
Maybe I should have said spouse.
No,
Significant other or
She's
something.
got a name, got a name.
Judy.
A partner.
No, I'm the one in our household that says we need to figure this out. New Year's weekend is where we do a bunch of planning work. So, yeah. So just planting the seed. Because we,
Well noted. I'm the bad one. I
you
know.
know, this, we got to make sure that doing this work isn't all just about being work, right? That just like our employees, we want everyone to have a productive life, and that includes us too. So, and I'm the worst at being a workhorse, in my view.
What we need is paid vacation then.
You do.
You have it.
I think we have it.
All
You
right.
don't even have to record it as vacation.
Yeah, yeah, got the best of all worlds.
For all the
Get your
employees.
work done, you get to go on vacation.
For
No,
all the employees.
I talk about like a camp.
And by
Missed
the
the
way,
point.
Are you talking globally?
I'm
was
not
talking
sure what you're
about-
getting at,
But
but
it's okay, that's fine.
so
okay.
Let it go.
Catherine, the comments that I sent back to for the last board meeting, I responded to your email and I didn't really mean to do that as a reply to all. It was kind of like I was reading the agenda. But my comments and just I attached it to yours, so hope I didn't violate any public meeting. rules by doing
We
that.
took care of, it was it.
Good, okay.
Kevin saved
But
you.
just don't do it again.
Yeah, I know. I'll
Kevin
be more
saved.
careful next time.
All right, thank you.
Or maybe I just won't respond if I'm on vacation.
Exactly. Rules of procedure, when you're on vacation, you're on vacation.
You just don't reply. That's what Alan said to me. And I keep that, I do that religiously.
Yeah,
Just don't reply at all.
okay.
For Jerry.
Does anyone have anything else for today?
I get to go to Roseburg now.
Ooh, Roseburg, we are hereby adjourned. Thank you.
My next meeting is the night at 6 o'clock.